Seeing as we are recording and I know this can hear me, we're going to be starting in about 2 minutes if you're on the stream or if you're watching in the future. So sit tight.
with an amazing price on our Veracode. So we hope to see you all here then. We'll offer the QR code for that particular competition, and if we we'll answer the 3 questions correctly, and we'll put you into a random draw, and the winner will be notified probably by Michael.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, sounds
So
good.
I know I've done the anti-bribery course, but tap me up.
So thank you very much, Veracode, for such an amazing prize. On to tonight, though.
I'm going to zoom straight ahead.
So we actually have 2 talks tonight. Have we reversed the order?
We're doing reversing the order.
Reversing the order.
Because he's already said.
It's just so to keep in touch with the DSOLG, we do have a website which we're currently in the process of transferring to other hosts. So that's going on at the moment. So the best way to get in touch with us is through our email. It's team@dsolg.com, and all of us read that email. So please get in touch with us if you want to do a talk, join us on the podcast, or you just got some suggestions about how we can make improvements to the event. Meetup, that's how we advertise our events, and we also have a LinkedIn page, and some of our videos are now up on YouTube, and we have a podcast.
Oh, yep, sorry. Yeah, one job.
One job. The DSO Overflow podcast. So that is recorded usually a couple of days after the event. We talk to the speakers, but sometimes we have some guest speakers. So the last 2 have been guest speakers. We had John Willis, and we also have Matt Johnson as our latest 2 episodes. They are very much worth listening to. But please do subscribe, like us, and also give us a good review on there as well to get the message out there that DSO Overflow is a great podcast if you're into DevSecOps. You might get a t-shirt.
Do you want to do this?
Do you want this one?
No pressure.
Shout outs. This is a community event, and so we support the other communities that we kind of work within, and we love to kind of shout out the different events that different members have got going on. I think some guys here. Do you want to shout out about any of your upcoming events?
LLHS, Ladies of London Hacking Society. Send your lady colleagues to us. We're on Meetup.
But it's not just exclusive to females, right?
Yeah,
Yes,
but
it is.
mostly. Or people who identify.
Yeah, in OWASP London, we have our next meetup on 3rd of August. We have 2 talks, one about DevSecOps maturity model, so very important. And the second one is on use of AI for automated security testing. So can you just tell AI, go and test my network, and we'll just do it for you. Come and find out, August 3rd.
Okay. Anyone else from any of these other?
Not from, but I know the guys closely who run London DevOps, and in fact,
Matt Saunders.
Matt,
Yeah.
Mark, Alex,
They're doing it tonight.
Jack. They're having session. They have a session tonight that's online. They basically over the summer things tend to shut down in terms of the face-to-face. This year they're doing online sessions. They have one which is clashing right now, but if you look at the meetup group, they've got some coming. They've got 2 more coming up over the summer as well.
3 good guests as well. There's I think it's
John Willis tonight.
John Willis tonight. I think it's well.
Yep.
And I think the other one might be Bill Benson.
No.
I can't remember who the 3rd one is.
Anyway, they're really good people to go listen to. So London DevOps, after you've been here tonight, go look them up online. They've recorded it, so you can go watch it after this.
Cool.
So,
Oh, crap. A round of applause, if you wish, for our sponsors. Sysdig support us. Shift left and shield right. Sysdig, I associate Sysdig with Falco. It's a free open source project for observability and security. But obviously scales up into a fully fledged security platform. So do go check them out. It's all based on eBPF, so very modern and super cool. Is that change? I don't know.
let's also note we put QR codes on most of our slides now, so you don't have to remember any URLs. You just point your phone at the QR codes.
Yeah, total security risk. Just whatever we say, scan it and do it.
Just get out there.
Yeah, nothing wrong with that.
No,
I went too far. Yeah.
So I'm not very good with technology. All right, Prisma Cloud, securing applications, code to cloud. That's kind of what we say. Prisma Cloud is an amalgamation of several amazing startups. I was acquired through one of them. I do happen to work there, and it covers pretty much everything, amalgamates a lot of context, security vulnerabilities, runtime, shift left, the whole gamut. I don't actually read what it says because it's a sales slide, but that's my interpretation of it. Go check it out or talk to me. Why is this moving so slow? Sweet spot. You like that? Good. It's doing this. It's like caching very badly. And a new sponsor. If you've not been to the meetup in a while, we have Apiro been sponsoring us since April. A very high. Well, I've been right about unify your application security risk prioritization and remediation. It's very much a sort of graph-based observability platform and security platform for the cloud. It kind of does everything as well. I'm very curious about it. I think you should be too. So go check out apiro.com or scan the standard QR code. All right. If you'd like to become a speaker, Glenn's already said, contact us at team@DSOLG, but don't do it today because I accidentally broke the website and the email in our migration to the new website just before we started. We all make mistakes.
You can scan that though, and you can fill out the form.
Yes, that will work. You might want to make those white.
They work.
They what? They're working? Awesome. The next meetup. We never do this. We never see when the next one is. So finally.
Because we never know what it is.
Because we never do, because we don't know what we're doing.
We've got everything planned.
But now that we've got
places,
Frankie in charge of meetup ops, we know what it is. August 16th.
And our speaker's actually here today as well.
Where?
There he is.
There he is.
Of
course.
So yeah, Jonathan will be joining us next month.
All right. It's going to be at Just Eat, very kindly sponsoring the venue. And what a surprise, we'll be ordering food from Just Eat. I think we are going to kick off our first speaker. So, maybe my laptop sucks. All right. There's a slide that's about to come up that talks about the books we're giving away, which are Modern Software Engineering, Build Better Software Faster. Everybody wants to do that. And Fancy Bear Goes Fishing by Scott J. Shapiro, A Dark History of the Information Age and 5 Extraordinary Hacks. I think that is a very fascinating book. When we get to the end, ask any of our speakers an interesting question, and they will decide it's amazing, and you each may award one of these books to an excellent question. I think we're going to have a 2-second break while I add Ronnie. Ronnie's going to kick off first to the Zoom, so our people online can see it as well. Charles. All right. There he is. But he'll introduce himself in a moment. That's a lot of reading. But you can introduce yourself now while I throw your slides up.
So, welcome, Ronnie.
All right, hi everyone. Thank you for coming for listening to my presentation. So I'm today an AlgoSec acquired employee. I co-founded Provasio just a couple of months for good luck before COVID hit, and resigned my job and had to be forced into learning the hard way how to build a startup in a COVID timeframe. So that was fun. My background is predominantly coming from a threat management scape. For my sure. So okay, I think it's better. So background-wise, mostly malware and threat management in enterprise systems. Malware research labs, I guess, would kind of be more appropriate. And somewhere in 2014, Symantec, at that time, the company I was working for, decided that, hey, we have a malware guy and we need to transition to the cloud. Let's just throw him into the mix and see how it works. So we basically were tasked to lift and shift the enterprise component of the threat products of Symantec into the cloud. and that time was like an open stack. It was a huge learning curve for me, going into DevOps and understanding really what we're dealing with, from automation and how to adjust all the processes. So with that, I as well went and worked for Dimension Data Entity, doing something similar, building their, which was an on-prem system to big monolith, breaking into microservices and then moving it into the cloud. And at that time, the security team, as we moved and wanted to move to Azure, they started interviewing all the engineering team to build the security program. And with that comes a lot of suggestions for new tools. And looking into, okay, I'm now moved from .NET platform to .NET Core, and I want to containerize everything. What tools exactly the team was proposing were quite cumbersome. I don't want to mention names, but at that time, it was 2019, it was fairly much agents running, and we have to kind of carry lots of technical depth into clusters and maintaining them and updating them. And talking to Azure about changing their AKS architecture. So it wasn't very pleasant, and that's the reason was, from opening the startup that I did, right, is mainly around how to properly scan these applications, containerized applications, in a dynamic way, as a SaaS kind of level, right? So that's what my startup really is, expertise in dynamic threat analysis for containers, and then expanded into lightweight CSPM, and we ended up acquired by AlgoSec, a great company. So we're getting lots of love today and expanding the platform to even further steps. So that's pretty much my journey so far. Right? So I'm today based in Sydney, Australia, and that's a pleasure for me to be here in London and provide the presentation. Okay, so when I started trying to build and squeeze everything into an hour and started doing quite a lot of research around, I tried to stick by the agenda, which was challenging for me because for the building everything for the presentation, I as well learned quite a lot of new things on the way. So I said, all right, I'll try and stick to the agenda, but I'm not sure if I can deliver everything in terms of the program itself, right? But I definitely think that, and I'll try and stick to the and provide the insights that I saw along the way of doing that. So coming from the malware space, right? So what's the agenda is the non-containers and Kubernetes exploits, right? So in my days as working for a malware threat management vendor, doing all the scares in the beginning was quite good for business. So I'll try as well and keep on that spirit. Then I'll go and just mention briefly, or not briefly, so on containers and Kubernetes best practices. And I'll talk a bit about what I think, essential with GitOps and OPA, right, especially for a security program, because I think listening to and reading for quite a lot of material, right, it was very insightful for me on how it was used in modern, in lots of companies today with container security programs. Yeah, I think the audit tools and practices, I'm not sure if I was able to squeeze in, but I definitely have the examples in front of, that I can share later. All right, so containers and Kubernetes exploits. So there's a dangerous world out there, right? So this is like some of the headlines I picked up, right, that misconfiguration is still top concerns. There's about 1,500 incidents reported every week for exploiting weak configurations. Red Hat reported about 53% detected Kubernetes security in the last 12 months for misconfigurations. And the container risks that they're great for packaging and deployment, but there is compromise, right, when it comes to security. So they're not naturally born secure, and there is some Cocoa containers. There's lots of things that are done today to improve that, right? But there are enough vulnerabilities and examples of container escapes these days, dirty pipe, and that basically leveraging various methods like privileges. So if you run on root on host escape, and the last malwares that were recorded was Silo escape and Team TNT, I think is the recent one that was grabbing headlines. And then Azure escape, that's as well, it was a POC where it was demonstrated by Palo Alto, and it enabled a cross-account takeover. Basically, if you're running as a, for your with your cluster, and Azure escape allows jumping from and infecting another cluster that belongs to another company. So that's more or less the danger of it, right? So that's there's nothing that has been done in the wild, but the demonstration from Palo Alto showed that that's doable. And from OWASP, right, there's quite about 10 reported Kubernetes risks, right, from insecure workload configurations, supply chain vulnerabilities, RBAC configurations, centralized policy enforcements, inadequate logging and monitoring, broken authentication, networking, secret management failures, and misconfigured cluster components, and as well as outdated and vulnerable Kubernetes components, which are quite lot of them. So it's really all over the map, right? So if we're looking on the kind of on the Kubernetes cluster, right, on the orchestrator, there is no area that is left that is not really prone to some risks. So overall, I think it's important to know that there is nothing that is safe, right? So this is something that is mapped, and if you go for OWASP and click on each and every link, it will show you exactly where and why. Live exposed, so that's something I've done just before, just an edit recent, just before this session. So I went to Showdown, Showdown.io, and I looked for the Kubernetes product, right? And then I looked for the ones that hasn't expired SSLs, and then I looked for the one that basically return me statuses, right? Of so just I'll quickly show you how it looks like. Just struggling with the Zoom bar. Oh, okay. I need to exit from the presentation, I guess, and share my screen. Is that correct?
Oh, I shared your PowerPoint. I didn't know you were going to
Okay.
live. So just unshare and reshare the whole screen.
Share.
Yeah, just reshare the whole thing. So just do that. And you're solid.
Okay.
There you go. You're back. Yep, good.
All right. So Overall, it's exposed around. This is like an etcd exposure, right? So this is the number of nodes I got back from Shodan, and I'm looking into. I just clicked on the US side of the world, right? Just because obviously the surface is larger, but just wanted to show you, right? Like I didn't go further, right? But each and every one of these, right? The unauthorized, right? This is an invitation for a brute force attack. So that's exposed on the internet, right? Like this is something that, and that's Microsoft Corporation Services, right? So you can scroll and you can see all the ports and everything else, and it's just everything from everywhere. But
Isn't that out of 7,000 vulnerable Kubernetes one, 3,000 are in Microsoft.
yeah,
Don't scare others.
Don't listen to it.
all right. So that's okay. Yeah. So it just I think exposure-wise, right? A step further would be to look on the administration ports of Kubernetes, right? Like this is just a public interface, right? I probably can scan it with other tools. So just visually, it's easier to show it, right? And just look for administration ports of Kubernetes, and you would be able to access, right? So it's like an easy target for hackers, and you would wonder, how much is reported and how much is not reported, right? But overall, this is the stuff that you'll see in the wild. I also actually went further, right? And I've done with, I used just like grabbed some random IP there, and I ran, I used Aquasec Cube Hunter, which is an open source tool. So you can use it. There's several of them, and I just targeted like one of the IPs that were available, right? And I'll just show, right? It basically exposes, right? So once it's connected, as soon as it shows the version, right? That means like you get a response. It means like you can start guessing users. It means that you start targeting vulnerabilities. Right? As soon as especially version 1.9, right? It's quite a low version, right, of the Kubernetes. So you would definitely find enough vulnerabilities there in the wild that will target that. I'm trying to go back to my share mode. All right. Okay, so the interesting thing is, like, I also toyed. This is like I looked for expired certificates, right? So the number was as well didn't change much, right? So you would be amazed, like how many Kubernetes cluster running from all the known vendors and others that basically are prone to any attack that relates to expired certificates, and there are quite a few of them. So if you look on the, for example, on CVE details, right, for Kubernetes, right, you would find, right, that is today about 52 just reported today existing, and there's patches for one, and you can really go in and figure out, right, which one is the most dangerous one, and which version is prone to this attack, right? And if you were a hacker, right, like it's kind of a low-hanging fruit. So yeah, so what's the best practices here? So some, I'll just switch to containers, right? So these are just some of them, right? There is quite a lot of them, right? But these are like the most common to know and talk about, right? Is use official and verified Docker images as a baseline. It was more complicated in the past, right? It's easier today. As soon as you land on Docker Hub, they will immediately bubble up the official images. So it's not as kind of a zoo as it was in the past. So it's a cleaner way of working, right? Because when you're working with official and verified Docker images, you know for sure that the vendor has done all the vulnerability scanning, and Docker has as well an indication on the website that shows it's clean from vulnerabilities. And so it's overall, if you're picking up something from Docker Hub, just make sure you pick from a vendor image. Then preferably use a Docker image with a specific versions. So an example here, right? Not to use random tag, right? Use always latest, and because you don't have any control, right? If you don't use latest, right? So because if you just pick up something from Node, for example, and your control policies haven't verified this image, right? If you just started and you just want to get on the container journey, right? The latest will give you the latest, right? So if you want to force an image that you know for sure is clean for vulnerabilities and you trust it, right? Then use specific, subversion. Okay. Use small size official images. So many images are based on different distributions. So you'll get sometimes a full-blown operating system with all the utilities packaged in. So those features will never be used, right? So large image size and it's a large attack surface. Use linear distribution of OS, for example, Alpine versus Ubuntu. So it's the same thing. If an image doesn't require specific utilities, like choose the linear and the smaller image footprint. Leverage the logic of optimizing the cache image layers. So each command, right, in the Docker file is a layer, right? So when you pull a base image, right, it already comes with the layers, right? That's just to get started with. And then when you want to add any application to it, right, it will start adding, layer by layer into it, right? So, the Docker cache is able to remember those layers. And if there is no change, as soon as you build it, like you just pull it from the cache and, it's pretty fast and it's efficient. However, if you modified any layer, then like in this case, you make a one file change, right? Then it will start as well. It will detect that file change, and then it will rebuild everything after that. So, and it's a problem for performance, right? So this is something as well, and size, right? So you better put the your modification as the bottom as possible, right? So you will have the configuration built properly. I didn't cover all and every one of them with PowerPoint slides, but I'll just mention, right? So you have as well Docker ignore file, right? So this is also very helpful because it helps to speed up time. So that if there are enough steps and stages that you don't need, ignore file will help you, right, with minimizing the time. And use the least privileged user. So if you don't mention which user, it will always pick up root. So make sure you always avoid that. And last but not least, scan your images for security vulnerabilities, right? There is enough tools out there, so make sure you use them and include them into your lifecycle. Some as well information about the Kubernetes best practices. So same thing is like it's just a continuation to all your components, right? Make sure you scan them. Improve your host operating system configuration-wise, hardening. Minimize the attack surface, right? So make sure you use the blast and minimize container images that you have full control on. And deploy time security. So this is, this I took it from Kubernetes side, right? So there's like quite a lot of expansions on that, and then harden your Kubernetes cluster, right? So during deploy time, make sure that you have some policies that are doing the checks and everything, and then integrate security tools with Kubernetes clusters, specifically the ones that protect your network settings, so security groups that always comes from the cloud vendor, and web application firewalls. Runtime security as well, implement the security controls that you need, and that applies to your enterprise security governance policy. And the detect and response, right? So make sure you build everything that allows you, like agents or anything else that will respond to attacks or threats that are currently happening in your clusters. Some scanners, right? There's a bunch of them. These are the ones that are very popular. I just showed you an example before about with KubeHunter, but there is quite a lot of other tools and companies that are providing open source tools that would be good to leverage. So this is the MITRE attack for containers that was posted last year. And each of these tools, right, would cover some of them, not all of them, right? But it's important to understand from each tool, right? You can map it back here and make sure everything is covered based on the latest from MITRE, right? Because it's important that you have an answer to each and every path, right, in the MITRE, for each and every technique here. So this is an example of what KubeHunter covers, right? So for example, green areas and the way it covers, it doesn't mean it covers everything. It just covers some of the techniques, and it just shows exactly how. And so you would like to map all the gray ones that, for example, KubeHunter doesn't cover. So the usage of tools is important, right? And important as well is to be able to map it to MITRE. It will give you the confidence you need that everything is working all right. So security in the build environment, right? I took this, I didn't want to reinvent stuff, right? So I just took this picture from Aqua as well, right? So this is, you need to go through the whole lot, right? So everything today, right, is in DevSecOps mindset, right, is starting from the developer and up to production. So each and everything, every step, right, the unit test, the SAST, the dust, the composition, SBOMs, functional tests related to security, and everything needs to be mapped, and the validation, and that everything, your Docker images are properly signed and validated up to prod. I wanted to get into talk about GitOps, right? Because I think it's an important mindset, right? That is valuable. At least for me, it was valuable to learn and hear about, right? So I hope that you guys as well will, if you're not familiar with it, right, at least understand the significance of that shift in mindset into GitOps mode, right? So what is GitOps? I'll kind of explain a bit. So first example is the GitOps versus GitBoss, right? So when you're working right in a DevSecOps mindset and you want to be as close as possible to developers, right? As developers think, having and imposing Git processes on a developer is always risky, right? Because once you trying to confine developers and you know and introduce processes they don't understand and they don't relate to, what will happen is okay, I should have asked you a question here. So, in your opinion, right? Why do we want to avoid being a Git boss, right, or Git dictator? If you have any cool experiences to share when you been in an environment when there was one, I just would like to hear your kind of what happened. If you have anything to share. Yeah.
Very much working a process where working specifically in the data platform, where you've got sensitive areas of the data platform, where you've got PII information, and then you've got non-PII information, and especially around those sensitive areas, you need to implement guardrails around your DevOps practices. And as long as you explain and you document well exactly what those procedures are there and why they're there, then usually you can get the dev teams on board. Whether if you just enforce those guardrails and then step away, and then when developers can't do anything and they'll block, that's when you're going to get a lot of pushback. But if you have flexibility and you actually explain the reasons why and how it actually helps processes, then usually you can get around that instance a lot better.
Yeah, and that's really that's exactly what will happen, right? Like the pushback is, I think pushback overall would be good. What I think more risky is the ones that don't push back and just basically do this, right? It's Victor Hugo, right? So when dictatorship is a fact, revolution becomes a right, right? So it will create a shadow, right? Like, so you will have developers walking around everything you want to impose, and they will find a way. And that's the biggest risk, right? Because once you have a large organization, you know, they will find a way. So from your point of view, right, if you are familiar with container security practices, where do you think a starting point for a container security program should be, assuming you have one?
I don't think you should necessarily think of it as a starting point, because you should actually have an active view into every single stage.
Yeah. So that's really true, right? But this, you know, I think it's kind of a tricky question, and yeah, you would want to have, I guess, everywhere, right? But if you're just now starting and you're coming as a new employee, like so, and they just hired you for the, you know, for sake of providing value and building the security program, and you know, depends on the company itself, right? So I would just, that's my personal opinion. I'm not saying I'm right, but that's my personal opinion, right? So if I was coming to a new company and they're already in the cloud, I would first start looking into like what's going on in the cluster, and then I will start going down to CD, CI, and then to the dev local, right? If I'm just now transitioning to the cloud, right, and I'm a new employee and the company is saying, okay, you know what, before we move forward, like I need to build a security program, like I would first look on what happens in the dev local, what the dev tools that they're using, how to get those tools under control, how to consolidate things, and then do the same thing in CI, CD, and down up to the cluster, down to the cluster, depends how you look at it. GitOps. I have here a bit of formatting issue. Anyway, so GitOps is it's as close as possible, right, to get operation and developers together, right? So it's an operational framework, and that operational framework uses Git as a single source of truth. So you want to manage your infrastructure, applications, deployments, right? And ensuring that deployment environment always matches the desired state. So this is a declarative approach. And what's the difference, right, is that in the past, right, it was more about you define the state and then you push it, right? And when you find the state and you push it, and it's still you declare, right, but it's more of a kind of a throwing it out there and then making an assessment if it actually happened. And what GitOps bring, right, is that it's more working towards you building your infrastructure to pull the changes from Git, and that helps you to kind of get the warnings about your state that it's drifting, rather than you trying to figure out whether it's drifting. So that's the change in the mindset, in the mindset itself, right? It's important change in mindset. Okay, so I have a question. What do you guys think, and what is a developer-friendly mindset? And I think when should developer get feedback in the GitOps operational framework? Two questions. You can answer on any one of them, whatever you feel like. Yep. What's your name? I'm just sorry.
When they commit the code, is when they should get the feedback.
Okay. Any others? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, 100%. So I think the answer is really as early as possible, right? So the commit stage, merge stage, right? It's probably some of the early places you can, and further down, it's much more complicated, difficult, and will create frustrations and pushbacks and workarounds because they've invested quite a lot of work, right? Probably moved from 3 or 4 environments, depends on how mature is the company. And it moved from dev to integration to QA to security to staging and so forth, right? And then you find some kind of a putting control that will raise lots of resistance and people will not be happy. GitOps basically very much help to adopt DevSecOps mindset in the company, right? So you want to bring the DevSec and Ops into the same way of thinking and the same way of building the process together. And Git is used by everyone today, right? So having the developers the ability to look into what you declared and what you defined for them, having them to agree to it, is very important part of it. And so when you're looking on GitOps, right, like it's, overall containers at the end of the day, it's the atomic unit that moves around everywhere, right? So this is code, and it's a shift left security. It's key to kind of enforce it as early as possible, and the ability to discover all of these components, right, and understanding them and developing and automatically building the security policies, right, and the controls for it. That's what GitOps allows you to do. So GitOps is basically the practical implementation of the DevSecOps mindset. So it's allowing you and DevSecOps culture, right, by removing manual configuration and introducing automated security into the life cycle. So it's a very important, right, the pull model versus push model. It's quite a significant shift. It's using declarative approach, right? So the system state is described. So instead of providing instructions, as I mentioned before, it's how to build the infra, right? You declare how you want your infra to be. And you can control the version, right? The Git is the source of truth, right? So as you branch out, as you do the code, right, in Git today, you maintain the same thing with GitOps, right? Like you just define your declarative state, right? And every time you need to make a change, right, you branch or you merge as you would do in any software development lifecycle. So it brings the automation, right, into the ops team, right? So this is really the single place for operation to create, change, and delete. and it's done by autonomous agents. So it's all automated. It's all done by agents, and the software agents, they're called as operators, and they are the one that enforcing the state, and they are the one alerting on drift. And it's a closed loop. So the delivery of a proof system change, it's all automated. So just to, why do GitOps, right? So it allows developers and DevOps teams to version control the infrastructure and ship application faster. It's basically allowing you to standardize the workflow, to do the audit, to do consistent and introducing code changes and rollbacks, and as well more reliable because it detects any drifts and reliable detection results, and then make the correction itself. So enhance security because it's shifting security left to the GitOps operator. So you kind of using the software, the GitOps software, the agents of the software to enforce the security by introducing the readable state of your infrastructure. So this is just an example, right, of a push model versus pull model. Push model, it's easy to set up to understand. It's works with most tools and effort, but it's not as secure as the pull model. And the pull model is fast, efficient, it's a tighter integration, and it's much more secure than the push model. And it's designed for Kubernetes, although there are ways of using it for not just for Kubernetes. So one of the tools is Argo CD. So Argo CD, it's basically it's a declarative, it's a continuous delivery tools for Kubernetes deployments of application to the cluster, and it relies on the GitOps operational framework, right? And there is other tools like the Flux, and it's a KubeStack is more on a Terraform based one, but they're all great starting points if you want to learn more about it and use them. One example I wanted to use is in that context as well, and tying up Argo CD to OPA is very efficient, especially when you're using it with admission controllers and conf testing as a combination. So what is policy or open policy agents? The policy, it's a set of rules or guidelines that determine how a system should behave in a specific situation. So generally defined certain actions are allowed, prohibited, or required, like we mentioned with tags, environment, variables, right? These are all policies that you want to enforce. So allow policy, right? It's just an example. Admin users can create or delete Kubernetes resources, and deny, right? It's deny traffic from specific addresses or containers that cannot run through. So just general question, like, have you ever used any open policy agents or open source or any other? If you have an experience with that?
I kind of have not used, like, set up it, but it was used in an organization for the, it's a kind of like admission policy for any containers to be, wherein there were some requirements where containers should be not run as a root, and so
Okay. And so you used OPA for that or some other?
Sorry?
Did you use OPA or use them?
I'm not sure because I haven't configured, but we were kind of using that.
Okay.
In the closed environment, because different team managers to be fair.
We're using OPA, but we're also looking at a new KS project at the moment, which doesn't support OPA. So I think we're looking at just like native RLAP for that.
Okay. So with Argo CD, right, like you can use anything you want, right? It does have a built-in support for EKS, for Azure and AWS. I think as well for GCP. So it will natively connect, and there is like quite a lot of kind of examples, library of policy that you can start building. One of the things that with OPA that you can use, right, is conf test. I'll just quickly mention here and show more or less. So what is the OPA, right? So it's an open source general purpose policy engine, right? So what it does, right, it unifies policy enforcement across your stack. And in this example, right, you're able to enforce with conf test, right, and test for policies, right, from the engineer, right, through its merge operations, and then use Argo CD and then Gatekeeper to make sure that your state of policy, right, is basically enforced. And it's all done, right? So this is an autonomous agent, right? This is an Argo CD icon that I used from their website. And that's more or less the process that they recommend to, it's a kind of a reference architecture, there's quite a lot of documentation. But it just shows you like in an illustrative way on how you would like to use conf test. So this is like things that I recommend, right? This is why do we want to go in that route, right? So this is a day in the life of an app developer, right? So there is quite a lot of things that a developer needs to take care of. And when you have, productivity consideration, right? A developer that does all that, right? Taking care of the containerization, the runtime, the orchestration code, the provisioning of the environment, then the build, the testing, right, the deployment, network policies and routing, and then setting up, Prometheus and all the monitoring that is required. There is quite a lot of compromise if you leave all of that right within the dev team, it's great to have that knowledge to do all that, to automate operations, right? But overall, what it can lead to, right, is infrastructure. Because if you're in a large organization, right, you will have different teams using, could be due to either way, that's the autonomy that you have in the company. So each team works with different cloud vendor or works and build their own tenants, and might even have like 2 or 3 organizations, right? If you're using AWS under one company. So I think this is the state that you want to avoid and want to put control on. And moving to shared, that smart personal accommodation to shared Kubernetes infrastructure, where you control and you provide the tenants and isolate the tenants architecture to the feature team, to the development team, that they deploy, right? And they can use those tenants, right, as part of one dev type of infrastructure that is not allowing them, they understand how it's securely and isolated, right? And it's owned and managed by a delivery engineering team, right? So either you carve or you build from existing resources, right? But the recommendation is have one team that understand and can automate everything, because it's GitOps and using Git as the policy controller. It allows the developers to pick up and understand the policies and even build them with you, and then introduce them within the deployments. And you have like a control over a shared infrastructure that you can build tenants in isolation, that they can, every time they need one, right, they can create one. So the shared infra security considerations, right? So you definitely need for robust policy, and you need to ensure that there is a compliance across all tenants. So if you have like I would say like one team that is doing development for some kind of a back-end applications, and another team that is doing the front for your company customers. They could be disjointed, but they would always work on the shared infra. Right? They might be managed in located in different geographical time zone. It could be a new company that that was acquired, but as soon as you bring them to the center of the shared infrastructure, you can control the tenants. That's where you have a better security because you can enforce compliance. And then you still have some room that you leave for autonomy, because if coming in from a state where each team could just go to pick up a cloud vendor or work with one cloud vendor, and they still would be responsible for the deployment and automation, right? You kind of ask them to lose certain amount of autonomy. So there is a risk in that, right? But overall, if you do it properly, right, then they shouldn't feel much of a change. And what also, if you want to build a team that can manage all these policies, right, you have to build the feedback loop. So that feedback decrease productivity and increase time to deployment because all the refactoring and changes that it will introduce. And you want to introduce some clear communication about policy, so either through Slack channels or somewhere that developers can communicate quickly with you, right? That so if you're running a security team or security more operational team, having that ability to quickly go into some Slack channel and ask questions about policy changes, that's a great way to get feedback and clear communication about any change that you want to make. Or if you're looking on using Argo CD or as well as OPA, you can provide those warning, and I can show you an example with on those changes that are coming within the code itself. This is a recommendation, right, for how to work and provide feedback loop for increasing developer productivity. You have an engineer, right? So that start building his local development, and you have a control here with conf test that detects certain drift, and so you can fail his push or give warning here, and then when it goes to integration, same thing, you can detect it early, and then when you're going into prod, right, and you want to merge things out, right, then you can as well fail. And during the time, right, so this is where you don't want to kind of, this is like the late feedback loop, right, but overall, this is the side that you want to provide like all your warnings, and then here you will do the enforcements. So at least the developer will know in each stage here, he will have an early heads up, okay, something in the policy is changing, and I need to understand or I need to adapt my code to it. So here is some conf test and OPA examples. So what are conf tests, right? So conf test policies in OPA is using regular language. It's not the easiest way to get your head around it, but it's fairly, I guess, easy to overcome, right, once you get the logic in. Warning, right, you want to use like deny rules for return, to block something from happening, or you can do a warning rules or violation rule names, right? So you can define and structure all these rules and then control them in what environment you want to apply them on. So there's plenty of examples out of the box in GitHub for conf test pack, right? So this is just just kind of a handpicked ones, right? So this is for violations on S3 buckets, on public RDS, on blocking public access to S3. The Docker must pull from some pull registry. NPM packages that are published under an organizational scope, Node.js projects, right? So these are all things that you can already get out of the box with the conf test. I just took one, developer that kind of clubbed the ones that he had adapted and used them. But overall, if you go to conf test, right, you will find quite a lot of documentation. So, that's more or less an example, right? So this is your deployment stack. So you have the containers, right? You have the name, and you want to make sure that the image, right, for Nginx, right, is always of a certain version, and you want to control the ports of your containers, right, for your images. And you want to use deny message, right? So you have an input, right? You have the variable, right? That you can go and you can use here, like that's the syntax from Rego, and you basically want to make sure that any image that ends with the latest, right? You have like an ability to block it, right? So this is an example of how it would look like in Rego. Sorry. And that's how you would define, right, warning and fail in stage. So say you have a dev deployment, and you will declare that in dev environment, right, you would like that Nginx images, right, will be latest. You can allow that, and then in the stage environment, right, you want to make sure that if you have an Nginx latest, right, that you will deny it, right? So in dev, you won't want to do warnings, and in stage, you want to deny it. So how would this enforcements would look like? So you have you allow environments, right? So this is your variables. It's dev, stage, and prod. So and here, like in deny no environment label, you want to basically disallow the deployment. And if you do have one of those and it's equal, right, like then you allow the deployment to go through. So that's more or less the syntax, right? So if it's dev, right, you want to, that's how you will detect it. And this is where your block of code, that how it will look like to fail it in stage if there is no if it's not in dev, right, then you're not allowing any container that is tagged latest, and that's the message that you will give to the developer. And so you can really control all that, right? So you can dev image is tagged latest. So this is, you provide a warning early on. Latest tags are not permitted in stage or prod. So he would know that it's okay for now because it's just in dev, right? But as soon as it go further, like he will need to make sure to define a specific version. So that's the block of code, right, to deny Kubernetes objects without an environment label. So for each environment, you will have, so if it's dev, you provide a warning, and if it's not dev, then you deny the container to go through. So that's just quick examples about, okay. So that's just quick examples, right, of what you can do with OPA and GitOps. So if I will have another slide, right, what I will do, right, is just show you how this entire flow work with OPA. So you declare the state, and the conf test is really the enforcer, and that is pulled by the OPA agents and runs all the time, right? So you just basically all you need to do is change and Git the code and apply new policies, which will be introduced by OPA, and then your Argo CD will make sure that it's constantly maintained that state, and you don't have any drift from it. Okay, so skills. I guess you know. I think culture, right, is important, right? So you know, it's DevSecOps culture to build and agree, and the security policies that you want to introduce, right, around identities, configurations, admissions, and networking, right. It's important that you will have those, I guess, soft skills and technical skills to be able and talk about these concepts with your development team. With anything, right, container or not, right, like you need to be a master of the domain, right? So container is the Linux world, so it's good that you will have as much as possible understanding of Linux skills, Linux administration, Linux commands, you know, and shells. Understanding the structure of the container, the advantages or disadvantages of it, right? Understand the boundaries between the container and the host. Understanding the various runtime and the configurations and the public images versus vendor. So that's I think I guess a good starting point. Learning path, right? So if you want to be and start not from zero but gradually get to hero, I think at 6 months is doable, right? So month one, you want to understand the DevOps culture, the Linux basics, the various SCMs. And then move your way up to essentials of cloud and infrastructure as service, the repos, containers, repos, and then move to CI, then move to CD with orchestrators, and then start using hands-on, you know, Terraform, understanding basics of Python programming and automation with Python. And within 6 months, right, start experimenting with configuration managing and as well as monitoring, right, your infrastructure. There's a few links I provided here, just playgrounds that you can start. Like, you know, there are a lot of tools today. You don't have to almost install anything. I found quite a lot of interesting, I guess, sandboxes environment that literally I don't have to run anything on my local host. I go and that entire thing is getting provisioned. I get an access and the playground is there for you to start and working out whatever you need to. I don't know, I could fill up, I guess, another 50 slides with resources and things, right? But the ones that I found very useful, right? Hacking Kubernetes with Andrew Martin, right? It's a free book. I can order a hard copy from Amazon, but overall, I would definitely recommend to you know, download the free book and just have a good read of it. Yeah, that's I guess there's quite a lot of things that you know, the playgrounds of Kube Cloud, SIG security, right, of Kubernetes is so there is special interest groups around security in GitHub. Which is a very live community. I really recommend to see all the work that they provided there. That's yeah. You know, there's quite a lot of things that you will find that you know, once you start going down these special interest groups of Kubernetes, it will lead you to more. I definitely recommend all the online talks, right? Especially the KubeCon ones and AWS ones. I found them quite useful, and I learned a lot as well in the process. Some of the acknowledgement. So that's Magna Logan from Trend Micro. I loved all his material, right? There's quite a lot of years. There's a link. I'll share that link as well. But he has so many tools for around how to build container and Kubernetes security program. Is just amazing. It's just an endless list of information. CDCon or GitOpsCon, right, is also a very interesting place to look at. That's some of the things, like especially from the New York Times team, Eva Ben Ezra. She's like a great presenter, had a great talk in the recent KubeCon in Europe, and I recommend to go for it. I think that's it from my side. Any questions? Thank you.
One of this. All right, thanks. Thanks, Ronnie. Did anybody ask you a question or make a comment that you thought that was good? I have to remember.
That gentleman there, I don't know, they didn't say the names, but
That's fine. Point at them. Hands up if you were that gentleman.
Yeah.
Excellent. This is nice foreshadowing for next time. Either of these books you're interested in? They're both awesome.
They're both brilliant. Dave Farley, he wrote a book about CI/CD pipeline as well.
Done.
Oh, yeah.
All right, cool. All right, we realized that we reversed the order of the talks. That was the long talk before the short talk. We're gonna let Nipun set up really quick, and we're gonna let all of you go to the toilet. Let fluids go out, the fluids go in, grab some drinks, see if there's any snacks left, and reconvene here and now in 5 to 10 minutes. And
if you do go to the toilet, there's a pizza box in the door that's there for a reason. Because if you go in the toilet, you'll get locked in. So do not move the pizza box.
into the toilet. That's new. All right.
I'll send you the PDF version of it.
Yes, please. And if you took photos of the slides, we'll have a PDF of the slides. You can contact us at team@DSOLG or via the meetup, and you can get a copy. Brilliant. Thank you. All right. Thank you. There we go.
Hopefully it was useful.
Oh yeah.
Swap. Depending on too much information at times.
Thanks so much, Ronnie. Especially thanks for all the references to all us.
Yeah,
Look,
really.
Sources.
You're just
What's that?
Candyland.
Yes.
Became like an expert on GitOps. Suddenly, yeah.
Fantastic. Right, by the way, that's where your audio is coming from.
Okay.
So when you join the Zoom, turn your audio
I think a
off.
lot of people kind of misunderstand, so
Yeah, I think
So you got the link in your email earlier.
Yeah, I think
When? Today?
if
You sent?
Yes, from me.
allow me for next time, we can definitely.
yes, I'm a bit deeper.
I want to do it for my company as well. So we do have those issues. So one of the things I found that
Don't join audio, right?
Or mute yourself, doesn't matter. And then it's easier if you don't join it off, then we got the feedback loop.
Yeah, no join.
And share your screen. You can share just the presentation. Or, yeah, I made that mistake earlier, and then you did a live demo on me. So I was like,
That's okay. I'm not doing live demo, so.
that's okay. By the way, everyone can still hear what you're saying.
Oh, that's okay.
That's what I didn't swear.
by that time, I'll share that I'll record it.
Hit slideshow.
Do the hands-on.
A lot of developers now that way how they work. They have their repo application and they put all the folder, right? And then they do something like Jenkins or whatever, right? And then Jenkins
You're now ready to go. This is our mute. Let's turn this meeting off. Which means quiet. All right. Now let everybody get some stuff in, and then 7:44.
2 minutes, 3 minutes?
How long do you think you got?
15, 20 minutes?
Perfect. We get thrown out here at 8:30, so that's like.
Oh yeah,
Make
definitely.
sure
Way
we're-
before that.
We started late.
Yeah.
Everything was late. Excellent. Good to see you again.
Same here.
Hope you don't mind Peru, but it's always much better when the arriving's on first, just because people travel, they arrive. And then the breakdown here. Yeah.
You know, the thing with, like, I'm looking for them
using SSH STP in production, and that is good.
Thank you, Steve. Uh, Absolutely. Before I introduce myself, I would just like to kind of go over the agenda quickly because it's a lightning talk. I know I'm short on time and I stand between you and your dinner, your bed, your drinks, depending on what's your jam. So we'll quickly do an intro, talk about like what's the state of code security today, some challenges that are old, some challenges that are relatively new for us, and then how to pick a SaaS product. And then what does this new paradigm look like where we have to make sure that our SAST product, our code security products actually work and effectively give us the outcomes we're looking for. And finally, the future. So quickly going into who am I? I'm currently CEO at Bearer. Bearer is a static application security testing products company. I started career as a security consultant engineer at NCC Group, later on at Deloitte. And then after that was head of security innovation at Deutsche Bank, solving some of the problems that are not easy to understand, not easy to solve, but lead to a lot of accomplishment, satisfaction, etc. And overall, you've had a lot of experience with AppSec, innovation strategy, partnerships, product. My goal is really to help security become easy for engineers and ultimately internet, get more and more trustworthy. So that's with that being said, what is different about code security in 2023? Who here has had exposure to ChatGPT? Amazing. And what is good to probably know here is beyond us users of the application of ChatGPT, developers have been adopting AI, and maybe faster than we wanted them to, especially as a DevSecOps crowd. 92% they already use AI tools, and then 20% businesses have started to use them, and it's more than a million devs who have started to adopt them, production pipelines, etc. Now, with that being said, where does that leave the security engineering? Well, the interesting part is maybe when OWASP got started in 2001, we were not at the point where security was a time-consuming task for a developer. Probably they were ignoring it, suppressing it, moving on. But today, it is actually number two in their list. Right? Number one is writing code. Number two is fixing code. And the other thing that, what's interesting in terms of mindset shift here is that developers do want to write more secure code. In fact, probably 10 years ago, nobody understood what was AppSec, like especially in the development community. Now everybody is aware of it. Everybody wants to write secure code. It's not lost on me where I am standing right now. Like this was a big contribution from this company as well. And with that being said, like what's missing, and from their perspective, this is all the stuff that GitHub Developer Experience Survey reported really is better collaboration, right? So I think sometimes it's too far off, right? Like people are reporting to them what to fix. Sometimes it's too intrusive, maybe in their IDE, maybe that's what they don't like. But really what they are looking for is better collaboration on security so that they can actually write more secure code. Thanks to AI, this is where we are. There is a lot more in secure code everywhere. And the product teams who are rushing to adopt it, everybody wants to have an AI strategy, everybody wants to use an LLM. So this is what is happening, and we can always fix it later, right? So where does SAST come into this? I think code security has evolved a lot. There are a lot of companies that help with securing the parts of code that's not written by your developers, probably open source dependencies. But we are here to talk about and focus really on the custom code, the proprietary code that the developers in your company write. And that's what really static application security testing is for. The generic format is called static code analysis, but specifically for security, that's what SAST stands for. Now, interestingly, it's something that's not really liked by developers, and because they don't like it, they don't use it. And ultimately, the challenge with that is that They are the ones who are developing the applications. They don't like it, they don't use it. So yeah, going back to insecure code. But let's talk about like what are the needs of a modern development, security, operations environment. Starting here on the left, you want to develop the code, commit the code, test it right there, right? Build the code, test it right there again. Deploy, test it again. When you want to compile all the codes, do a scan again. And then all of that, once you have the results for the feedback loop, which has gone back from every stage, finally you're close to releasing the application, you can understand that this goes beyond the development environment into the security team's hands, and they can understand and make some decisions which are probably not as many as they had to make before. So these are the decisions that require architecture changes, framework level differentiation, and whatnot. And finally, this, we talked about collaboration earlier. We want them to be collaborating with security teams. So we want to be able to enable that. So that requires Slack channels, that requires Jira tickets, that requires responsiveness and that connectivity. And that, I think, is what the DevSecOps native environment for SAST today looks like. So whose SAST actually fits modern teams' needs today? Just by show of hands. Okay, so it's a little bit of a challenge that we should talk about. But you know, the good news is there are ways to find out. Right? I think something that is really important to understand is the speed of your scan. And you know, rule sets evolve over time, right? Like your code base evolves, your language framework choices evolve. Is it even relevant now? How is its precision and recall? These are technical terms that really talk about the figure that we have here. Precision is the measure of true positives, and recall is the measure of true negatives, false negatives. So if you're able to have a good tool, you'll have a high percentage of precision and high percentage of recall. Really, this is what a SAST result really looks like, right? Like there are things that are relevant, there are things that are irrelevant, but your results are the ones you see in the blue. These are the retrieved items, right? Some of them are false positives, some of them are true positives. And that's what you see when you look at a SAST report. Does it actually cover the modern risk paradigm? And by modern risk paradigm, I mean software supply chain risk, privacy, sensitive code detection, sensitive data detection in code. Are you comfortable introducing it to your developer? I think these are some of the things that you can easily test your SAST for and see if it is modern DevSecOps pipeline worthy or not.
Can I throw another one in there?
Sure.
Why can't we also ask, does it make your application more secure?
Absolutely. I think that's a great question. And look, security is a defense in depth pursuit, right? We all know that. We have been there. We have tried it. We know that. This is actually a hygiene thing, right? Like operational efficiency and hygiene. The better it is, the easier it is, the more efficient it is if you solve these problems earlier, right? And you know, this is not deterministic, right? SAST is not a deterministic technology that has access to your endpoints that can see how the attackers can compromise the application. No, but what you're talking about is probabilistic, right? We are looking at patterns that are known bad of malicious, compromisable code, and you're trying to fix them, right? Also, I think it serves as a very interesting training tool for development teams if you can put the feedback at the pull request level. So ultimately, traditional SAST isn't where it needs to be, and really part of this is the bugs problem. It's too much, right? Too many things are reported. It's not just that, but also research has been conducted by people at Google and PhDs at universities to see why it's not at that level where it's easy for a developer to choose it as a method of finding bugs, right? Some of the things we've talked about is like, yes, speed is really slow from a traditional SaaS product. There's way too many false positives for it to be effective. Reporting is complex. I think the jargon of security barely understandable for a developer who has not been trained for years and years and years at looking at those reports. And so a lot of these tools are black boxes, right? They are not extensible. I don't understand what the rule is doing. I have run these tools in the past, and so it was about 4,000 issues. And yes, I can sit at my screen for 40 days trying to sift through each and every issue and then report it to the developer. By that time, the application is in production. So yeah, we don't want to work with that kind of speed, especially when the goal is to go to production every day. A lot of the challenge is also around dependency on languages, right? So building the rules, building the framework to adopt a new language is hard for a SaaS tool, and I think that's a huge challenge. So that kind of automatically makes it hard for a modern development team to see it as a favorable option, especially when you're looking at new frameworks and languages being released every day. And then the maintenance costs, right? So this is something that I think is probably more relevant for tools that are older than 10 years or something, because then they have to be deployed on-prem and then maintained on-prem, and understanding those rules and getting professional services to maintain them and make them applicable to your environment, it takes time and energy that requires a lot of cost. But wait, what if I told you, yes, you can have both the speed and security? So SaaS for modern developers, it's really about fast and accurate scanning. It is needed to be open source, otherwise you'll lose developers' trust pretty quickly. Should be very easy to install, like either locally or in your CI/CD pipelines. The other thing is the rule set has to be understandable and accessible and transparent, right? Like what I shouldn't be confused about is like, why is this rule triggering, right? And what is the method that this rule uses to actually say, yes, this is an issue. The other thing that developers looking for is a human readable, simple and flexible reporting format, right? Like serif, HTML, these are the formats. On the other side, understandability. Again, I talked about jargon before. I think jargon is a huge challenge. We have made security unnecessarily complex for us, our boardrooms, and of course for developers as well. So that's why they're not using the SaaS tools that we have developed so far. Also, if we want to go back to the DevSecOps pipeline I showed, they want to get these feedbacks in the pull requests, right? IDE, if you talk to a developer, I think they might say it's too intrusive. I work with developers every day, and they tell me that it's maybe too much in the middle of their workflow. I think at the pull request level, doing a delta scan, reporting to you exactly the issue in the line of code, probably you commit 100 lines of code, manageable, right? So I think that's where the modern developer SaaS needs to go. And of course, the integrations need to be deep within their preferred workflow tools like GitHub, GitLab, Jira, etc. But yeah, wait, like it's not just for developers. What does the SaaS for modern AppSec look like? Something that can have not just the OWASP and CWE risk detection, but also optimize their own remediation efforts. Remediation efforts can be optimized if you have more context. And so far, we have had like very limited context from the rule sets that have been developed by SAST products, right? Beyond that, what can you do if you have context from sensitive data? You can say, you know what, I have 100 applications to secure, the ones that have the most exposure, for example, ones that have a lot of PHI, I would want to secure them first. So you can optimize those remediation efforts. You can also detect where your code is interacting with outside of your code. So I talked about AI earlier, like, do you know if your code has calls to the OpenAI APIs? What is it sending to Redis, AWS S3? You want to get this visibility to make better decisions when it comes to remediation. And the other thing that you can get from a modern SaaS is potentially the ability to enable privacy by design reporting. A lot of B2C companies have the GDPR reporting challenges around PIA, around ROPA, and they want every single service to be clearly identified as what sensitive data is being used by it, what is the classification of it. And you can easily do that with a modern AppSec tool. Yeah, so here's a little bit of a plug for Bearer. Since I'm the CEO, it came out of stealth as an open source product in March 2023. Really, open source adoption has been exciting for us, and you know, we support like limited languages today, but what we support, we really have a high precision and recall for. So the idea is to be fast and precise at the same time. And that's really us. And last but not least, just the key takeaways for you. Yeah, SAST is critical for scaling AppSec to all of your development team. And you know, speed without precision is not good, and precision without speed is not good. So you don't want to unnecessarily create a complex product which takes weeks to resolve and result into a report that is probably not actionable by the time it gets to the developer. At the same time, you don't want to do such a lightweight test that it does not have enough security criticality of rule sets. So just something to balance. And then last but not least, like you want to be able to get both privacy and security embedded in your SDLC. That is something that's possible with the SAST. And then lastly, it can optimize remediation efforts. So feel free to check us out. We do have a GitHub repo QR code here for you to go and star and test it. Yes, please, questions.
Well, you presented a high-level overview of what was wrong with previous tools and what is the right way to do that. But it seems like some of the things that the right way to solve issues is already implemented by some companies out there.
Mm-hmm.
So what is the biggest differentiator for Bearer?
Yeah, I think for Bearer, it's really the ability to add context with sensitive data detection in the code, right? So that's a differentiated rule set that you don't find in most other SaaS tools. But look, there are companies like SemGraph as well that do lightweight static code analysis that is fast. But again, like precision is important too. So you must test them out and see, like benchmark them with other tools and see like, are the rules actually triggering? Are the rules actually relevant for your security needs or not? So definitely something to think about.
And sorry, follow-up question if I may.
Yeah.
And that PII information, for example, detection is based on some kind of a labeling integration with Swagger or something like that?
No, it's something that was created with the help of GDPR itself. It was the most comprehensive framework for data classification, and we took all the 122 different types of sensitive data types that they have defined and created the recipes for that.
So as a developer who's trying to integrate that, do I need to do something to label my data or my APIs to?
No. You can modify it, you can add to it, but you don't need to start by a lot of labeling. Like we have already done that classification and labeling. So I don't know at this point, like what level of accuracy you're expecting, but of course, this is something that will be a process to get like the 100% accuracy on that part of like, is this sensitive for me or not, right? That's the part that will be a process, yeah. Please.
If, as you just suggested, the developers or who are obviously the primary users of the tool, or certainly the primary end users, have the ability to change the rule sets, how do you stop them changing the rule sets to avoid the tests and the reprimands rather than actually improving their product?
That's a great question. So the rule sets are really defined by you when you implement it in the developer pipeline, right? So developers are using the product on a daily basis, but the rules are not modifiable by them. It's something that you set up at the action time. Nobody can modify the rules when they are being used, but you can add more custom rules. So for today, if you go and use Bearer, the rules that we have for each language will trigger if your application has those issues. If it doesn't, it won't trigger. So you can't modify them, but you can add more custom rules. That makes sense.
Yeah. Also, one of the things that you highlight as being a problem for what you call traditional SAST is being language dependent.
Correct.
How do you get around that?
Yeah, that is unfortunately something that you just have to have an architecture that is flexible enough to add new languages quicker. I think the dependency still exists. You can't get around the dependency. So that is unfortunately one of the things we have to deal with, even in a modern SaaS, be it SendGraph, be it us, be it like any other product.
So essentially, it's a problem you haven't solved.
That's right.
Yeah, I'm curious about like where you see the future of things like developer safe listing, because like I mean, take like the Python example of like you stick no QA with the rule right at the end, and like I've certainly had moments where I'm writing some code, I've done like some form of open or exec or something like that, and I'm like, cool, I know that I validated that thing beforehand, but the thing is I don't want to safe list that in perpetuity. I want to safe list that for the actual bit that I'm doing right now. Do you have any thoughts on like whether there's a way of addressing that going forward, or like, you know, is this one of the bigger issues?
So is this something that relates to probably like a guardrail that you want to create when you're committing code? So maybe going to GitOps example that Ronnie talked about earlier.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. I think this is something that you'll need to create a rule for in most modern SaaS products to think about like how to implement it. Also, it can be done within the pipeline as an action item. So if you have, let's say, a GitHub action, you can enforce a whitelist or a safe list using that as well.
I mean, I suppose I'm more specifically talking about like, let's say you've got a line that assigns a command to a variable.
Mm-hmm.
You've got another line that calls out, we're going to exec across this variable, right? What typically happens with SaaS tooling is like, it will call out, okay, like the line where you do the exec is dangerous. If you make a change to the variable, it's like, yeah, that's fine, you know, the next time round. And I suppose like the thing I worry about in terms of that is like, I mean, ideally I'd like to be able to safe list the commit, not the file, you know. And I was just wondering, like, you know, do you think that there's any path forward with that?
So if I understood this correctly, what you're saying is that there are two ways to solve or fix the code is by either changing the function itself or changing the variable, right?
Well, I mean, let's say that, like, you know, in some cases you are actually going to want to exec some variable.
Sure.
Right? It's going to happen.
So SAST will say it's code injection vulnerability, right?
Yeah. It will always say it's a code injection vulnerability unless you safe list it, in which case you've just gone, cool, it was fine when I did it, but unless I implicitly trust every employee who comes after me is going to change this code.
Yeah, so it's an ability to flag particular finding as not
Ignore-
exploitable or ignore it
Ignore
in this
it, yeah.
context only, but not on all projects.
Yeah.
I think that's the question.
That's the question. So yeah, I think it's possible for you today to ignore a specific finding. Now, can you do that locally and for you only as a developer?
No, I mean, I don't mean it for me only as a
Yeah.
developer. I mean, like,
Across the company? Yeah.
In this particular reporting instance and this particular reporting instance
Yes, you can.
only.
Yes, you can. Yeah. So that's no. Well, it's ignored forever, essentially.
That's what he said. We don't want
Yeah. I don't have a good answer to that question. Sorry.
no, that's cool.
Yeah.
I just wanted to kind of know what the state of the art is.
Yeah. No, I think the ability today that I've seen in modern tools is the ignore option, right? And that will suppress it, but it will suppress it forever.
Yeah.
And not exactly like suppress it not on next instance or something. Yeah.
Another option is to write your own sanitizer function or guardrail function and then add it to the tool. So basically, then it becomes a part of the library.
A new rule.
So if you create your own method saying this is a safe command execution library, name it whatever, and say if you see this, then it's okay.
You know, I just don't think I believe that.
Yeah, that's whatever. Or guardrail rule.
Yeah.
Maybe having a variable or something.
Denise said two breaks the line. It should try to go. That's when it will
Yeah.
fix it. No, it's not.
Careful, mind that cable behind your leg.
Yeah.
Actually, we had a solution for that in our internal SaaS tool. We just hash the line and then hash changes there. Ignore.
Oh, that's a good one.
I'm going to take your idea now.
Not my product.
What the variable you're execing on, which is on a different line?
No, you just hash the entire line, and then if the line changes.
Yeah, but the actual exec line doesn't change because you're executing across the same variable. I guess the answer is like write a rule to stop people from writing code like that. But I mean, that one's a slippery slope, right?
Great. Anything else? Anybody questions? Yes, please.
Can we make this the last question? Can we make this the last question? Because I'm very conscious that Verico was out here by 8:30, so and we've got to tidy up as well. So
Yeah.
So just to try to follow on from that, do you think there's a danger with these tools that we're sort of teaching developers to code around a kind of fixed rule set? So they're still writing bad code, they're just writing bad code that doesn't trigger the SAST checks.
I think it's a fair question, but the idea with the fixed rule set is that it's fixed in this version and then you keep improving the rule set like over and over again. Of course, an organization's own threat model and understanding of the application is different. So yes, we do recommend like creating custom rule sets, and that's why the extensibility, customizability helps, right? So you can do that very simply using YAML. So that's the idea.
Great. So thank you everybody for coming along this evening. Two fantastic talks, Ronnie and Nippon. I think you've got a book to give away. I think you're going to give it away to the person you think asked the best question.
Yeah, I think it's him.
As you said, we do need to be out here pretty sharpish in the next 10 minutes, but they also want us to keep the whole place tidy. So could we put all of our empty bottles, any scrap food or anything like that, can you put it all back out on the other side so that we can... Is that right, Michael?
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
There's a algo sense swag here and...